Dear friends, I'm glad to see you here at Feigin Live. It's Friday, 29th of April. It is 10 p.m., 2 minutes past 10 p.m., and we're starting a new stream on our channel, day 6504, again with Alexey Arestovych. Glad to see you, Alexey. Likewise. We have about 180,000 people watching us. Please share the links to this cast. Leave your likes, it is important. We're trending here, but it is still important. If you're watching that in English, please subscribe to Privateer Station and leave a like. Judging by the comments from the yesterday stream, which was very piercing in its revelations, it did achieve a certain effect. And yesterday we had about 470,000 people watching us live. Also, please subscribe to Alexey's channel. The link is below. Both Mark Feigin's and Alexey's channels are in Russian, though. Alexey, so what is new on the east? What can you share us? The Russian advancement near Izum has stalled. Two options: they're either rotating and replacing troops, or they're tired and not attacking and replenishing, but not attacking anyway. There is a little bit of tactical movement, but at least they're not pressing. We will see what will happen next. They're not pushing as actively as they did before. Near Kharkov, in the north, our troops have advanced a little and took one interesting settlement. We're slowly moving there, taking our land back. Near Kherson, the fighting is local. We were pretty successful in hitting several congregations of their troops and equipment with our artillery. Gulay-Polya is basically stalled as well. Russian troops are not moving for the third or the fourth day. Mariupol is still a big problem, but street fighting is very active there. Our defenders are still fighting very professionally and very defiantly. Okay. Please tell us if this information was confirmed or not, that on the Izum direction, Gerasimov, the head of the Russian command, arrived to the front. Is it confirmed or not? There are different news. It is hard to confirm that yet. We do not have 100% confirmation. We have seen your post yesterday that Venediktov, the chief prosecutor of Ukraine, released names from the 64th Brigade in Bucha, that these people possibly partook in murders and the criminal activities there. Do we know any of these people, if they were captured or dead, or where they are? It is not so simple. Independent group made an investigation, and they're stating that some of the names in that list are not serving in the 64th Brigade and have not been for a while. However, that could also be the counterplay from the Russian side, counterploy to our accusations. So we're still working on that. It is hard to hide in the modern world, so anyway, we will find who was there, who was not. How do you locate who was there or not? Well, first of all, you could use the cell phone, tower triangulation. Simple phone, even the basic phone, has about 8 functions that could be used by police. More sophisticated model can be used 26 different ways to confirm certain things. So, usual investigations for crimes like that, they're about 5 to 10 years. But again, it's a question. Do we just stick with the official investigation, or do our special guys on soft paws find those murderers and rapists and provide some measure of revenge and punishment and justice. All right, so let's go talk to let's speak about Kharkov. I'm sorry, yeah, not Kharkov, Kherson. That's the one I wanted to ask about. I am hearing in my channels that Kherson businessmen are being pushed pretty badly by the Russian occupants, and they're pushing them to comply and also taking pictures with them that, see, they're complying with us, they're working with us. So several people are writing me asking question, what is the best strategy for them in this case? So one of the ways for them to do it is to follow the instructions of our ministry. It's not simple. We're discussing, and international experts are discussing the options there, because it is dual-sided thing. If they violate Ukrainian law, and we understand their extraordinary circumstances and occupation, and we can call an amnesty on those businessmen who actually reported to us that they were pushed. But internationally, these crimes have no time, no expiration time. So if we put somebody to amnesty, it doesn't mean that international law will. So it is a complicated situation because the Russian side is demanding them to pay taxes, and they're also adding ruble to the turnover in the city, in the region, and they're also bringing teachers and some other workers to work there. Where they bring them from? From Russia, like teachers from Russia to teach in the local schools. For real, teachers from Russia? I can't even imagine how a Russian teacher would go to the battle area. He'll be killed by partisans or something? We will not shoot teachers. Our partisans are not shooting non-combatants. But they need to understand that whenever they partake in occupation, this is an international military crime. And they, when they go for vacation in Turkey, they can be met at the border. And these crimes have no expiration date. There is also another thing here, and I was listening for different communications within Russian army between themselves and their families, and there is a definite psychological break that's happening. I don't want to translate tens of conversations, but my take on it is that Russia is dying here. They're physically dying. They have losses of 50 to 70% of their troops, but the second they're dying morally. Main things we're hearing from, and that goes from the lowest rank to the highest rank in the army. We don't want anything here, just grab some goodies and go. And as one colonel said, I'll come home, hug my wife, kiss her, and then just go from hooker to hooker to hooker to try to forget everything. So the story is that Russia is dying here in two ways, physically and morally. Moral degradation of Russian army is beyond any imagination, to the level that some commanders, we heard them talking that they shot a couple of their own troops who refused to go in a battle, and it's still not helping. The others are still refusing. So Russian parents need to understand that when they're sending their kids to the army, they are risking dying not just from our soldiers, our troopers, but troops on battlefield, but also from their own officers. And another thought that's going as a red line through all the conversation is, what are we doing here? What have we forgotten in Ukraine? Why are we here? And going back to the roots, as Suvorov, one of the greatest military authorities in Russia, a few centuries ago, said that a soldier needs to understand in every moment in time what is he doing and why is he doing that. The reason is simple. If you're sitting in a metal box, shooting and being shot at with everything, taking a heavy risk of becoming a burning piece of meat every second, you need to understand why you're doing that. Just disciplinary actions do not motivate you to do it. They're good enough to make you do daily routines, but they're not good enough to push you into attack and risk your life. That's why Suvorov said that their basis for the action of soldier in battle, not successful action, but just action, just that he would go forward or follow a tank. He needs to understand why is he doing that. What for? What does it give it? And they're all basically signing off that they have no motivation base behind their actions. Soldiers, lowest rank, are saying that, and we're also intercepting colonels and generals. I heard today 2 generals talking. One of them is saying, Sergei, I don't understand what are we doing here. Both highest level officials, basically the salt of Russian army, the quintessence of their commanding rank. They're controlling their armies, and they're discussing that they don't know what they're doing here. They're murdering, raping, pillaging. What is Russia doing here? So, tell me if they have any of the political activists in detachments. There are some of them there who are performing that duty, but not many of them are left alive. Commanders are basically performing that function. And many of them, that's what we heard today, that the guy is saying he has 40% resigning and not going to go in battle. He shot 2 of them, still is not helping. Another intercept today, we heard that Buryats and Kadyrovtsi from Chechnya actually had a firefight in Chernobyevka about who's going to be in the first lines of attack and who'll be pillaging more, and Buryats had won. They're actually pretty tough guys. I've been there about 10 years ago in Buryatia with an excursion, little trip. And yeah, they're pretty serious and simple guys. And they won. Kadyrov, Chechens, they're TikTok warriors. Whenever there is no TikTok or internet, they don't really fight. What people don't understand often is that war is an amplification of everything, an amplification of good and bad. In our side, we also amplify both sides, but we're defending our country, so good things are amplified much higher, to a much higher degree. Russian army is not really doing anything good here, so it's breeding amplification of bad things, sadism, demoralization, all the criminal activities. That all leads to PTSD after that. They'll all be traumatized when they come back, just like Russians from Afghanistan when they return back, demoralized and drinking and going to heavy criminal stuff. And look at Bucha. Russia will have tens and hundreds of these little Buchas with the troops who return back with all that PTSD after this senseless war. That pendulum swung one way, now it'll be going the other. We've won, we will have a cultural and emotional uproar. It'll be the waves and the salutations of the winners in a great war. It is a big historic jump for us, a great trampoline for Ukraine, spirit lifting. And for Russia, it'll be the heaviest hit. It's the heaviest hit for all, from Putin to the lowest rank soldier. And they'll be reacting in different ways. They'll be hitting their wives, they'll be chopping some neighbors with an axe, maybe shooting police, maybe suiciding themselves. This is a huge traumatization of Russian society that's going on right here in Ukraine. This is one of the prices of war. Many people have not talked about that yet, but looking at what I've been listening to today, this is a huge poisonous river that is floating now in the Russian subconsciousness. They've opened a poisoned well, and it's eroding the souls and spirits of soldiers and officers. I'm not the one who would say they're all sadists and awful people, because war is a more complex thing. It's usually when one good man is fighting another good man, and both are thinking they're right, both have their truths. But Russian soldiers were put in conditions when they're bad men, and now they're massive sadists and marauders. Back in the Second World War, there was mass heroic action. Right now, it's massive downgrade. And it perhaps because the local population hates them, their command doesn't care about them and throws them into the grinder, and they deteriorate and then just fall for some things like I'll steal a laptop, clothes, shoes, or a toilet seat. And it's a huge tragedy for the Russian people. Do you think this can lead to some massive explosion of dissatisfaction on the front? Why should we die here? Why don't we turn away and go back? I don't believe it'll happen in this way, because we have not seen them really leaving the territory once they're here. But we've seen some troops that were next to the border with Russia, and after the first firefights, they basically turned back, returned, and said, no, we cannot proceed here. Heavy resistance. And that was on the level of commanders, brigade commanders. By the way, in Kiev region, we found a soldier today from Tatarstan who was hiding somewhere in a shed. He was found, and he was telling stories about, like Robinson Crusoe, how hard it was for him to live on that, so to say, island. So we still have a lot of lost soldiers in our forests that being found pretty much every day. People find them, they feed them, and they give them to the prisoners committee, so they're join our prisoners of war. These are the signs of Napoleon retreating army. That's what's happening. This is a huge moral catastrophe that's happening here. And there is an active moral catastrophe where people become sadists and they kill and actively act bad. But there are also the passive villainy that happens here. They hear that army has to be aggressive, but they are not too active. And they're passively deteriorating. They're ready to steal, to do other immoral stuff. And there was more information. I did not even share that a couple days ago. I got it. Now foreign sources confirmed that too. So Russian tanks right now very often have 2 people in a tank instead of 3. Can they do 2 of them? Yeah, they can, because one would be a commander and doing the aiming function, another would be the loading and driving. This is not because people who died. This is those who refused to serve. Those who were withdrawn from the north, near Sumy, Chernigov, and Kiev, about 40% of them, according to our data, wrote resignation papers. And remember, they were thrown near Izum into the fight again. But those weeks of delay, they were actually going through disciplinary action. Not that they were resting or, recuperating. They were actually doing disciplinary action on the troops to make sure that they even joined the fight. So, here is a Russian soldier who's been conscripted, joined the fight, being thrown into a foreign country when nobody wants you. You look around, you see your comrades, pieces of them on the field, being burnt, being eaten by dogs, and nobody cares. If you object, you get shot by your command, and then you can steal. What's your option? Die and maybe steal a little bit and steal that freaking toilet seat. So I want to say Putin is a great leader for Russia who managed to lead the army into the furnace in such a way that is destructive so heavily for the whole country. He's probably very consciously doing that, utilizing and grinding the whole slice of the population of Russia. I have a feeling he may be that proverbial American spy who is so effectively destroying the country. Tomorrow there'll be people talking about your statement. Well, okay, I should correct. Let's say he's a Chinese spy. Yeah, Chinese, that fits better. We have about 400,000 watching us, over 100,000 likes. Please leave the links to that cast in your social media, in your groups. I purposely ask Russians, my compatriots to share the data so people could see that, because many people need to break through that informational propaganda in Russia that is being broadcast at them 24/7 from state-owned media. And of course, subscribe to these channels, Feigin Live, Alexey's channel, and Privateer Station if you're watching that in English. All right, let's take a look at the future referendums voting that's coming in the south. That information about possible prisoner of war march in Mariupol, any confirmation on that? No confirmation on that. I think our signal passed through, and they considered that the repercussions for that will be pretty dire, so we're not seeing confirmations to that. Okay, good. We'll continue monitoring it. So with these referendums, in public sources, they put Kiriyenko to manage that for a reason, because he's a known falsifier of the elections, and the current rumor is that they want to do a fake referendum in a territory that they occupied. Even if nobody comes, they'll still announce that, hey, they're successful, people voted for it, and you go complain to somebody and see if it works for you. So all they're doing is really trying to capture the largest territory to 9th of May under their control, at least something, or to the 15th. 9th is an important date for them, because if you don't do anything till the 9th of May, the parade day, that whole activity will look sucky. And referendum is designed to somehow legitimize their wins. So they do have decisions, and they can't really fulfill them, because our complaints will be delivered via 155mm artillery shells. And targeting highly effective guided missiles. Of course, we'll also do the official paperwork, and we'll supply more data to the international court. They'll probably have another 2 volumes for the attempt to annex territory. So there's a funny thing, funny for us, not so funny for Russia. There's a commission that McFaul and Yermak are doing together. On the 20th, they presented it, and they took responsibilities to work with the sanctions with McFaul. So the goal of that committee is to define best sanctions, to follow up on the effectiveness of that, and continue with analysis to correct them and to curb the attempts to bypass the sanctions. So they're also inviting international think tanks and experts in different fields to really track the effect of current sanctions. So they'll be tracing and trying to fight possible workarounds for the sanctions. So according to their prognosis, by mid-June, these sanctions will be felt by every simple Russian. Right now, their food items are about 25% higher. Now we'll continue breaking their economy, and by September, complex parts of Russian economy will be dismantled or unsustainable. So those articles that were manufactured or heavy sophisticated assembly things that were done in Russia, they will stop. They will be out of components, or logistic chains will be broken. And the sanctions have not really started working yet. And also Western armament have not really been deployed on a battlefield. They've got some, but not that much yet. And Russian army is already demoralized and ineffective. And if you're really attentive and check what is landing in Poland over 24 hours and other neighboring countries, this is almost like the water dam was broken. So the weapons support, weapons supplies is almost here. Just give it a little bit of time. So by the 15th of May, when they decide to do that referendum, I'm not quite sure they'll be able to do that militarily, because that'll be on the Kherson direction. They're already fighting there. Buryats and Kadyrov Chechens are shooting at each other, and then add Ukrainian army that is equipped with Western artillery and other systems. I don't think they'll be conducive to any referendum. There'll be things that are reaching far and hitting hard. So we'll see what's going on with the referendum. It is just hard to do it in a city which is suffering from, which already has a firefight and artillery duels on its outskirts. So they'll still try to push it, They'll try to call it it's Russian territory and with things flowing from it. So what, near Belgrade, in Belgrade sky, there are strange explosions. Right now, today. And it's, they're not coming from nowhere. Of course, I'm not confirming or denying that it's us, but as it's sung in the Russian old children's song, happy birthday song, that there'll be a magician flying in a helicopter and leaving you 500 ice cream presents. So, we're that wizard that will live 500 different presents, especially the ones that fly for over 300 miles and have an accuracy of 4 meters, 4 yards. So people should not feed their illusions here. Russia will suffer military defeat in Ukraine. Physically, it will be Ukrainian army that will do that, but with the weapons and support of the West. And usually, whenever the West makes a decision to close a certain subject, it is usually very effective at the end. It kind of fits the American archetype, because it is bringing them back to the situation that Lend-Lease support into their usual archetype position. I just talked to several senators and congressmen in America. Some of them were born after the Second World War, whose dads were fighting there. And they're feeling similar things like back in their childhood, when a lot of Americans are actually joining together in that vision and fighting evil, saving the world again. They're happy to be on that white horse again. So look, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov stated that Russia knows the routes that NATO countries are using to supply Ukraine with weapons, and they're still going to hit these supplies in Ukraine. An interesting notice. So it doesn't really make sense to me, because he's not targeting Poland. He's not saying anything new. Basically, they've been fighting. They've been shooting all the depots and supplies in Ukraine already. So one thing happened yesterday when these idiots shot missiles in the back of United Nations General Secretary. They actually launched a big Black Swan event, because when you shoot such a figure, you basically put yourself and your country and your regime in the outlaw position. Because the country that is in the Security Council in the United Nations shooting at the Secretary of United Nations, this is basically shooting at the basis of the international relationships. This is the red line that should not have been crossed. It's almost like Genghis Khan, who was executing the ambassadors. I was actually watching today in the media, pretty much every more or less known politician in the world made a statement today about irresponsibility of such an action, that it is unacceptable to shoot the diplomat. And in your opinion, why did he do that? Well, he did 3 things in Moscow. He said it's not an operation, it's a war. Second, you are committing a military crime in the neighboring country, and third, that you'll be personally responsible for everything that is happening there. So that was probably a reaction. 140-something countries are already against Russia in United Nations. Out of 200, roughly, countries in the world, 2/3 of the world are against it. Actually, 3/4 of the world are against Russia. And it appears that this missile hit on Kiev while the General Secretary was there is a huge, very big shock to the diplomatic community and professional community in the world, because that's a bleeding line that was crossed. Even those who are on the fence have changed their opinion about Russia. Many of them did. So what if they choose, what if they use tactical nuke? Yeah, let them. They might even hit something. They'll still be destroyed. Russian Ministry of Defense is not commenting that. They could have said, Ukrainians did that again. It doesn't matter what they comment. Everybody, all the international diplomats already gave judgment to that shot, that Russia was shooting missiles at the Secretary of the United Nations. Many countries turned their backs on Russia. Let's say they were the ones that are trying to be neutral or trying to be slightly pro-Russia, but after that event, they really changed their voice. Similar things happened after Bucha. Bucha touched everyone. This event touched diplomats and politicians and journalists. Simple logic. How can you negotiate with a country who is shooting the figures of such a scale? Who can trust you? That Russian shooting basically blows apart the basis of any diplomatic relations with that country. How can you trust them? How can you do anything? If diplomacy is not possible with Russia, then what else is possible? They're basically cutting away their own ways out of this situation. If the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of United Kingdom used the word hooligan, those who don't know hooligans were the family, the maniacs, who were killing people, butchers, socially dangerous people. I also recall Twitter of Stephen King, who said, Putin needs to be taken out by any means necessary at the beginning of conflict. And they're asking for more. That degree of isolation we talked about yesterday, in the last 24 hours, it grew. It was like a wave in the stadium. They're leaving these ripples in the world. Tell me, what are they thinking about? You know them a bit better than I do. I probably would say it's somewhat a personal reaction of Putin, because something may have been left out beyond those 3 points that you mentioned that has really disappointed Putin or upset him. So that could be their reaction. If we cannot convince or use ultimatums, let's just scare them. We're so mad, we'll just shoot missiles in the United Nations General Secretary. Yeah, it leads to completely opposite reaction, just like with the war that at the end, right now, NATO border is about to be expanded times from what they had before. Same thing in Transnistrovia, Pridnestrovia. So when American military approached the border, and it seems like the temperature is falling down there, and they're curbing their military noise in that area. They don't have too many troops there, so if they try to escalate, what happens? They probably, if anybody comes to help Moldova, those Russian troops will be eliminated pretty rapidly, and they'll lose that Platsdarm as well. So here, they might have reacted and said, hey, we're mad, we're just, look at us, don't toy with us. They're idiots, I think. There are pro-Russian forces in Moldova, in other countries, in Germany. And now their colleagues who are defending Russia to one degree or another, they can't really use anything, because people who are opposing them can say, we do need NATO because see why. Russia is being unreasonable. So they had some base in those countries. They didn't have much arguments. They had a little bit, but they could use them, and they actually were using them somewhat successfully. They were trying to play their game in the United Nations, in the backdoor diplomacy, but they're getting response now. How can we work with you? You're shooting at our secretary. So you cannot stay neutral. You have to condemn such a behavior. So I heard that there is another rumor that United Nations Secretary was talking to Zelensky, trying to figure if they can kick Russia out of Security Council. United Nations is a very slow organization, but with Russian efforts, that story is going towards destruction of Russian influence on anything in the world. I think Russian professional diplomats are tearing their last hairs out after what's happened yesterday, because they're lost without any argument. They have nothing to use now, nothing to work with. One idiotic decision. They had an opportunity, they had a chance for a game or counter game, and now it's nothing. Okay, look, we're 36 minutes roughly online, 456,000 people watching us live. We have a little bit of time? Yes, we do. Okay, Lend-Lease. Any additional details? The decision was made. The help was asked for. So, as I understood, they will expedite these procedures, and not just these 30 billion, but the rest of it too. Why do you think that'll happen faster? Well, there is a logic behind it. In November, America has next election cycle. So they need, if current administration needs to secure that until then. Also, there are big Lend-Leases, basically big military contracts. So those congressmen and senators will go back to their territories and say, hey, look, we got you jobs, we got you money. So they need to capitalize, and rightly so, on this matter. And American business is happy too. And people working there, of course, are going to be happy. I know for a fact that American business related with military production are pretty happy, because that Lend-Lease for American is also pretty inexpensive proposition, because they'll be compensating these companies through other funds, other means, through the arrested means of Russian central bank in states and other channels. And it's very pragmatic political fight options. Good subject, good thing to use for the elections. So those politicians who are participating in that will actively use it for their own good in the November election, because it basically is a good face for them. They're helping to save the world, staying on the white horse. And America is, after losing in Afghanistan, withdrawal, after all the things that happened there, after BLMs and last year Afghanistan crisis, we basically helping America to get back on the white horse, and a lot of Americans are pretty glad about having this opportunity. I actually saw some congressmen almost crying from, happy tears when they got this solution passed, because they were in a video conference with me. I could see how emotional they were about it. It was, they're almost reliving the capture of Berlin, taking of Berlin, of freeing Paris. So that's what Putin achieved with his policies. In this context, speaking of frozen properties as corporate oligarchs and their companies, but also government. Russia has $350 billion frozen overseas. Some of them are frozen assets, Russian assets invested into American reserves, American stocks. So now they can be using these funds to pay for Lend-Lease. Yeah, this is what is in this law. It is not so easy to collect on the debts, but they're simplifying certain procedures to do that. And they're removing barriers to using these resources. So that's partly the big thank you to McFaul, Yermak Commission, who are helping to find ways to do that and to find more property and make it more painful for Putin's regime. It's an interesting story, as you see. Basically, Russian government is now paying for the destruction of its own army, paying with Russian money. It is, the real giants of thought. It's a strategy of the highest level. And now Sweden and Finland are also joining NATO, and they get another, 2,000 miles of border with NATO. And Ukraine will upgrade their weapons, and European NATO will upgrade their weapons as the result of it. This is some hefty strategic calculations that they've done in Kremlin to get to this point. Oh, listen, they're listening to us. I hear the aerial sirens going off in Kiev. They do want to shoot Arestovych, or like one of their propagandists says, Arestovych. Yeah, hope they pass. All right, Alexey, we're not holding you more. Just in case, we've been live for 42 minutes, 459,000 people watching us. Do not forget to subscribe, like, and our channels and the Privateer station. Thank you, and we'll see each other tomorrow, right? Yeah, perfect, good. Then we'll see you all at 10 p.m. Moscow and Kiev time.